Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Well-known retirement planning specialist and fiduciary Tony Walker loves high interest rates, and he says you should love them too. Extra, extra, read all about it.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
It's called interest. It's a common term tossed around by a financial world that thrives on it. As evidence of the turmoil interest can cause in the hearts and minds of savers, interest rates have different meanings and different consequences depending on one's financial station in life. For instance, to some, high interest rates paid to savers for the use of their money, such as the high interest rates we are experiencing as we record this show in November of 2023, can be great. In fact, it's a great way to save even more money than ever before without taking a bunch of risk. On the other hand, today's high interest rates are a nightmare for those needing to borrow money. Regardless of where you stand on interest rates and how and why the Federal Reserve controlling those interest rates makes a lot of the decisions they make, believe me, folks, interest rates are a huge deal, and for the saver not taking advantage of them is missing out on a lot of extra free money. You see, today's interest rates are as high as I've seen them for nearly 20 years. The good news, assuming you are a saver and more concerned with the return of your money than on it, you now can safely earn a ton of money on your money without all the risk, which is the topic of today's show, Why I Love High Interest Rates and You Should Too. Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, high interest rate specialist and financial fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we share with you how to safely grow your money by taking advantage of today's high interest rates, let me introduce to you in the studio this morning on this beautiful morning in Louisville, Kentucky, as always, America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander. Good morning, Aaron.
Hey, good morning, sir. Good morning, audience. I want to say good morning to Nathan. Nathan is a person that I've known for a long time. Unfortunately, crossed paths with him at a funeral last week, but told me that he listens to the show and watches the TV show, listens to the radio show. So, hey, Nathan.
That's cool. And we were out, and my wife and I were out and about in Louisville the other day and ran into somebody who recognized me from the TV show and actually asked about who you were. That was funny. They said, and who's this Aaron fella that you're always talking about? They couldn't figure it out. So real quickly, yeah, if you're wondering, folks, so I have two companies. The company that produces the radio and TV show is called Worry-Free Productions. Aaron Orander is the actual production manager here. Then we have Derek Hudson, who's actually our graphics artist, does a lot of video editing. So it is a totally separate company. But really, Aaron, I'd say, although we're separate from Tony Walker Financial, I mean, we work in tandem together, wouldn't you say? Really, you're in the same building, and you pretty much know what's going on and get to meet a lot of the staff here. So, but that's the difference. Yeah, we got Tony Walker Financial, which is what really we're talking about in the show every day. But really, the show wouldn't happen without Aaron and Derek and the Worry-Free Production Studio. So they're just doing a great job. And you've been doing this a long time. No wonder a lot of people recognize you. How long have we been doing this show together? Not counting the wave days.
Not counting the wave days. I started with you in June of 2013. So it's been over 10 years now.
Gosh, wow. Okay, back to our subject matter today. And it's one of the most commonly discussed but rarely understood. And it's this term called financial interest. And in a minute, we're going to get into the concept of compound interest. And depending on whether you're the lender or the borrower, actually that's true, folks. With money, you're either going to borrow it from somebody or you're going to lend it to somebody. And you might be going, well, I've never lent money to anybody in my life. Well, if you think about yourself as a lender, And these higher interest rates, I think it's going to allow you to see better and more clearly why you need to be taking advantage of these higher interest rates, assuming you've got a bunch of money, is what we call idle. Or we're having a lot of people, Aaron, that are just kind of burned out on the stock market and tired of leaving all their money there. And we're showing them ways, which we'll talk about in the show today, how they can earn really, really good interest without all the additional risk. Again, first time I've been able to offer these products in 20 plus years. So what is interest? Do you want to take a stab, Aaron, if somebody said, Aaron, what is financial interest? What do you mean interest on your money, or when you borrow money, what is interest? How would you try to define that term?
The simplest way I can explain it would be interest is what you pay for borrowing money from a lender.
Mm-hmm. Or vice versa. If you go to the bank and put money on deposit, they now describe that transaction. What are they doing there?
It's kind of the opposite. They are paying you money to have your base money working with them.
That's right. Yeah. So basically, here's Webster's has 3 different definitions. These are all pretty good. Interest is a charge for borrowed money, generally a percentage of the amount borrowed. Another definition is the profit in goods or money that is made on invested capital. And then I like this one probably the best. C, another definition, an excess above what is due or expected. So that's a good one too. And I think that almost gets into compound interest, and we'll talk about this later. So Aaron, they say it's the 8th wonder of the world, this compound interest, but let's think about that. An excess above what is due or expected. So let's say right now you can get bank CDs at 5%. You give them $1, they're going to give you a nickel at the end of the year. Does that make sense? 5% of $1.
Sure.
But if you left it there long enough and you kept getting 5 cents guaranteed through compounding, you might wake up and go, wait a minute, I don't have just $1.50. I got $3 or $4. Okay. So that's where that excess, and that's why folks, with these high interest rates, man, it's making planning for retirees so much easier now, because most of our clients are savers. They don't like a lot of risk. And as you'll see as we listen to today's program, going to be some really good news for you out there. So basically, let's before we take a break here, here's how interest works. And let's say right now, which I do hold in my hand, you can't see it through the magic of radio, I'm holding in my hand a dollar bill. Now, Aaron, there's basically 3 things you could do with this dollar bill. Here's your choices, okay? Let's say I give you this dollar and it's in your possession now. There's 3 things, and I'd like you to just see if you could name one. Just pick something you think you could do with this dollar bill.
Well, I can go spend it. I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I could take it and go buy something frivolous, or I could buy something for the kids, or, I could spend it in some way, shape, or fashion.
And you know me, the live well, die broke guy. I love spending money. But when you spend that dollar, the dollar's gone, but guess what you're going to lose forever? What do you lose on it that you could have been making?
Well, you can lose the interest.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's called opportunity cost. So that's a huge decision. So while I love telling people to spend their money, we don't want to be, as Aaron says, too frivolous, because you got to remember there's a huge economic cost to spending this dollar. In other words, you'll never, ever earn a penny on it again. So remember that the next time you willy-nilly just kind of spend some money. So the other thing you can do, actually, Aaron, and the Bible has an interesting parable about this. We were talking about this parable. Let's say you were afraid to do anything with it. You could just what? What could you do with it?
Well, you could just tuck it underneath your bed and
do
forget
nothing
about it.
Yeah, do nothing. But, you got the dollar protected, but you're not earning anything on it, which obviously inflation will eventually eat your lunch. That's the second thing you can do, just do nothing. And then finally, you could lend it to someone else and let them borrow it from you. And there's several institutions that'll do that. We're going to talk about banks. You could go get a bank CD. We're going to talk about something called multi-year guaranteed annuities. Okay, so you could, quote, lend it to the insurance company issuing the annuity. You could lend it to a municipality. You really know what a bond is? You've heard of bonds, right, Aaron?
Sure.
That's all you're doing. You're lending your money. Let's say the water company is issuing a bond paying 4%. Well, the reason they're giving interest away is they need the money for the bond. So and in a indirect sense, I guess as I'm talking out loud here, you're kind of lending money to corporations when you buy their stock or when you invest in mutual funds, because they're using that money obviously, to make money on their money, and they may pay dividends, etc. So those are your three options. You can put it in your pocket, do nothing, or, as Aaron said, you could spend it, but then the money's gone forever. And three, the most long-term practical thing, obviously, especially with these high interest rates, you could be the lender, loan it to somebody else, and let them pay you interest on your money. So when we return, I'm going to explain to you why I love these high interest rates, and you should too. I'm Tony Walker. You're listening to The Worry-Free Retirement. We will be right back. Are you retired or retiring soon? Do you have a 401k, IRA, 403b, TSP, or lump sum pension that you'd like to move to safer territory? Did you know that all the money you see on your 401k statement isn't really yours? Depending on your overall taxable income, the government essentially has a lien on your 401k that can tax as much as 40% of your money when you go to take it out. And with current tax rates set to expire in 2025, and considering the fact that our nation's debt is spiraling out of control, do you really think taxes will go down after 2025 or go up? Here's my advice. Don't sit around waiting to see what Uncle Sam will do to your taxes in 2025. If you have more than $250,000 in retirement assets, contact us now by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or give us a call at 877-499-9255. Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement, and you're listening to our story here about high interest rates, and a story I'm getting ready to tell you about someone who is ill-prepared, Aaron, and they run over to the lake, and they've got some friends with them, and they've never driven a boat. They don't know anything about a boat, and they forget to check the gas, and so they go out in the boat into this huge lake, and all of a sudden the boat runs out of gas. And all of a sudden they sit there, and the word I think of is they're sitting idle. They can't do anything. Now, would that necessarily be a dangerous position to be in if you and your buddies were out there? I mean, would you call it dangerous? What would you call it?
I wouldn't call it dangerous. I'd call it aggravating.
Aggravating.
I call it a pain, and there are other ways to get to the shore. They could paddle, they could swim, there are other ways to get to the shore, but that's not going to be the most convenient.
There you go. You're not going anywhere very fast. And if you just checked the gas tank and filled up with gas, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. So this is my point, folks. A lot of you have a lot of money. When I first meet with people, we call this our vision exercise, and when I'm working on an assessment. So let's say you're listening to this show right now. You want to meet with me. We meet in person. You have to have $50,000 or more to invest. That's our minimum account size to actually work with you, keep in mind. But anyway, you've got $50,000, and you show up, and I say, by the way, how much do you have in the bank or cash accounts, et cetera? And you say, I got $30,000. I said, well, do you have any plans for that money? And you'll say, no. And I'll say, you earning any interest on it? And you go, no. That would be the example of being in a boat idly floating along in the middle of the lake. Does that make sense, Aaron? It's not really dangerous, but you're not going anywhere, and you at least, with these higher interest rates, ought to get some higher interest. Oh, incidentally, I mentioned in the last segment, if you're just now joining us, that little parable in the Bible about, I think it's in Matthew 25. We cover the Bible a little bit in the TV shows, so I was kind of prepared for this. But you remember that story in the Bible, Aaron? Can you describe it real quick?
Yeah, in 30 seconds or less, a king goes away. He has 3 servants. He says, hey, watch over my gold. The first servant, I think, lends it to like 10 people and makes that much interest on it. The second one lends it to like 5 people and makes interest on it. The third one is scared to death. He doesn't want to lose anything, so he just buries it in the backyard. King returns. Servant number 1 says, I made X amount of more money for you. Great job. Second servant says, I made Y amount of money for you. Great job. Third servant is like, well, I didn't lose anything. And the king's like, yeah, you did nothing. You could have at least earned a little bit of interest on a portion of it.
Yeah, so he's upset that he could have at least earned some interest on it. I love that. So that's kind of what we're talking about. First of all, folks, I'm a big believer in emergency funds. I have money in the bank. That money that really is for emergencies or big ticket items I might have planned, I'm not as worried as much about interest on that. What we're talking about is larger sums of money. Maybe this is a $50,000 or $100,000 in the bank, or even larger sums of money in the stock market right now. These can be in your IRAs, 401k plans. And you really are maybe retired or getting close to retirement, and you realize, man, if we go through another 08, and I've got all this money in the stock market over here and it nosedives 40 or 50%, I may either have to go back to work, or if I was planning on retiring, stay at work longer. And so now you have an opportunity to take some of that money, or a good portion of it if you wanted to, and safeguard it. And here's the point: guarantee some really, really good interest rates. And some of these interest rates we can guarantee for long periods of time. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to explain the two different ways that we can guarantee our saver clients some really high interest rates. We call this the split IRA concept, and it can be used for money that's what's called after tax. It doesn't just have to be the split IRA necessarily, but we split it up. So on the one hand, the first bucket we use is through a brokerage company by the name of Charles Schwab. And through Charles Schwab, we literally can shop for certificates of deposits through various banks throughout the country, and we can get some really high rates. As of the date of this recording on November, what is today? November
14th.
14th, I'm sorry. November 14th, 2023, we can get one-year CDs with Schwab through these banks of, about 5.4% guaranteed. Pretty good, isn't it, Aaron?
Pretty good.
Now, keep in mind, we do charge a fee of 0.8%, so you got to remember that. But our role is to do the planning. We don't charge anything for that. We will renew those CDs or move them back to other strategies if we think the timing's better. So a lot of people say, well, gosh, I can get 5.4 at the bank without paying you guys. Yeah, but you got to remember, there is a plan involved with what we're doing. We're going to monitor the CDs and all of your other assets. So that fee of 0.8% is about half of what most money managers charge. So we can do that. We can get money in those CDs and lock those down. But what if you, like right now, Aaron, interest rates are very high. Could it possibly the Fed lower rates, and could interest rates go back down over the next several years?
Sure, they could.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. So, bird in the hand's better than two in the bush, folks. Right now, in fact, we have insurance companies, I'll explain these products, they're guaranteeing interest rates at over 5.5%, some of them over 6%. Listen to this, for a minimum of 5 all the way up to 10 years. So let's think about that, Aaron. What if you could get a guaranteed rate of interest paid on your money? You loan it to the insurance company, so to speak. The deal is they're going to hang on to it for 10 years, but in return, they'll pay you 5.5% guaranteed each and every year for 10 years.
Right.
That makes planning pretty easy, at least for the next 10 years.
Sorry, not to interrupt you. It's not just, so I'm understanding correctly, and our audience is, it's not just 5% on that first amount you put in, right?
Right.
It grows.
There you go.
Throughout the years.
So you're right. So that's the compound interest effect. I'm going to show you some numbers here at the end of our show that will really startle you in terms of how much this money can safely grow. And at the end of the show, I'm going to explain something that annuities offer that nothing else does as far as a tax planning concept called an exclusion ratio. So we're also going to show you how, depending on your circumstances, these annuities paying these high interest rates can also save you on some taxes when you go to spend and enjoy this money. So those are the two things we offer at Tony Walker Financial, all right? We do it through the split IRA concept. We can get you certificates of deposit at very high guaranteed rates through the Charles Schwab platform. We'll shop those. We'll secure them for you. We'll set up distributions for you. We'll do it all. And that's for 0.8% per year that we would charge, less than 1%. And then on the annuities, the beauty of the annuities, what we're using, these are called multi-year guaranteed annuities, or the acronym is MYGAs, M-Y-G-A, multi-year guaranteed annuities. And on these, again, there's no fees on these either. This is what I like. We're paid a one-time commission by the insurance company if you decide to put money in these annuities. The commission is paid to us by the insurance company, not you. Now, keep in mind, though, with an annuity, Aaron, if they're going to guarantee you, let's take that company that will guarantee you 5.5% for 10 years. If you were to bail out of that annuity, let's say in the 5th year, and say, I want all my money back, do you think you're going to get all your money back?
No, that's called a surrender penalty.
Very
correct?
good. So When you do these annuities, folks, you don't want to put all your every last nickel in these annuities, because if you needed money, again, we've got to keep some money liquid at all times. You could get in a world of hurt and be charged a lot of money to get out of these prematurely. So again, what we will do with our clients before they proceed into these annuities, we want to make sure they've got money in other places they could get access to should they need that money. All right, when we come back, we've got an interesting Tony in the Trenches, really interesting Tony in the Trenches, about being the borrower. And while we don't give counsel to high-interest credit cards, we give counsel to a lot of retirees and people nearing retirement about giving money, considering giving money to kids and grandkids now. And this next Tony in the Trenches that came in with a young person that gets caught up in credit card debt and why you might want to help them is a real showstopper. I'm Tony Walker. I'm with Aaron Orander. You're listening to the Worry-Free Retirement. You stay tuned. An interesting Tony in the Trenches. And also we're going to show you how certain types of annuities in certain situations can save you boatloads in taxes. Stay tuned.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no-obligation appointment. Let us help you today.
Welcome back to the Worry-Free Retirement. Our Tony in the Trenches comes from Sherry over in Lexington, Kentucky. She says, Tony, one of my adult children is having trouble paying back a credit card. He will not tell me how much he owes, but did say the interest being charged by the credit card company is 20%. Did you hear that, Aaron? 20%. Okay. I've even seen them higher. All right. She goes on to ask, what will this high interest ultimately cost him? And should I give him the money to pay it back now instead of letting him be saddled with this debt? So before I answer this question, Aaron, have you ever been in this position where you had a bunch of credit card debt and you just couldn't get out from under it?
No, I haven't had a lot of credit card debt. Of course, I don't have a lot of credit cards. We've got, I think, 2 credit cards, one for emergencies and one just a regular credit card. I will say, just speaking honestly, at the time of this recording, Jessica and I are looking at refinancing, actually, and it is for sure going to put us, in a higher interest rate.
What are they going for right now? I don't even know.
The one we're looking at is going to put us in the 6 to 7%, area. We currently, not to give too much information away, we purchased our home 7 years ago, and our current rate is like 4.2.
Okay,
so a lot better than 6 to 7, but our house has also gone up in value. We've done, people who listen to this show regularly know that, I finished the basement and I put an office and a bedroom and another bathroom in and everything else. So the appraisal for the house is, almost, it hasn't doubled the house, but it's close to it.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations. You mentioned that interest rate, and I know that sounds high. Aaron, our first home we bought in 1984 in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Some of you listening may remember those years. Interest rates for homes were 16 to 18%. The government had a special bond rate. We called it bond money. We didn't know what we were doing back then. But it was 10 7/8 interest for that home loan. It was $49,900 what we had to borrow, $49,000 for this home. And we thought we had gone to interest heaven. That seemed so low back then. So if it's any consolation, compared to the 80s, that's some really good low interest rate. Okay, so here's our scenario. Let's kind of examine this. And by the way, folks, again, we do not do debt consolidation, debt counseling. This is really geared towards our retirees and those retiring soon who have some money. And you've been thinking about, well, Tony, you're always talking about giving money away to the kids tax-free now rather than wait until I croak. Why would I want to do that? Well, here's a good example. Again, we've got this young lady in Lexington, Kentucky who has an adult child who has informed her he won't give her the amount, but said he's paying 20% interest on a credit card. So what we did, I went to our own TJ Timmy Reagan.
What's your name, Timmy? No, my name's not Timmy. I don't like being called Timmy. I've never been called Timmy.
And basically, Timmy has run this for us, but it's two examples. So we're going to assume, Aaron, that's a $20,000 debt. We're just making this assumption.
We'll just make that number up. Got it.
Just making it up. So let's say this young man or lady or whoever it is, the child, let's say it's $20,000. The interest is 20%. And let's say the adult child can only afford to pay $400 a month. How long do you think it'll take to pay this credit card back? Just the $20,000.
With 20% interest? My
Yes.
gosh, I'm guessing probably a couple of decades.
So it would take around 10 years, but here's the kicker. Not only did they have to come out of $20,000 out of pocket after tax, that's a lot of money, but the interest alone charged to them was over $23,000, so making the total deal $43,000.
More than doubling it.
More than doubled. So the bank, think about this, the bank, which brought nothing to the table, right? He has essentially borrowed the money from the bank to go buy whatever this person bought, paid the bank $23,000. So the bank made more money than the original principal.
Yeah,
It's
that
crazy.
would be like going to the bank and saying, I need $10, and they'd say, okay, tink, 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 that'll be $23.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, okay, it gets a little better. So let's say the person says, well, I think I can pay $533 a month instead of $400 a month. It does help. You at least get it paid off in 5 years, but still, Aaron, you would think it wouldn't be that bad. The extra amount paid in interest, you put in, remember the original loan was $20,000, is now an extra $11,000. It brings the total to $31,000. That's still a lot of money to just hand over to a bank or whoever's doing the lending there. So the key is, folks, you want to be the lender, not the borrower. So in our remaining time, let's go back to these multi-year guaranteed annuities, which we offer through Tony Walker Financial. We use various companies. By the way, any company we use has to be A- rated or better, excellent rating by Best. So I would not, if you're buying an annuity, make sure, do not, in my opinion, I would not use a company, if you're going to put a large sum of money with them anyway, that is at least A- excellent or better with Best. That's just what we do as fiduciaries. That's kind of our model, so to speak. So what I did was, we imagine you had 3 different annuities. Let me get to my cheat notes. These are multi-year guaranteed annuities. And one of them, you're going to put in $800,000. Let's say you're rolling over a large 401k and we carve out $800,000, and you're going to let it just kind of grow. For 5 years, the future value of that, Aaron, compounding interest would be almost $1.1 million with no risk. Okay, that's one growing. We've got one that's 6.15%. So got that one. Or you could say, well, Tony, what about if I let it grow for 5 years? Well, I get that 10-year annuity you were talking about. That's paying around 5.5% guaranteed for 10 years. But then when I retire, see, this is where the planning comes in. Could you all send me the interest every year for the next 5 years? See what we're doing? So we're putting in $800,000. We let it compound. But then beginning year 6 through 10, you take out the interest. In that example, again, you would have a little over $1 million by the end of the 10 years. But between years 6 and 10, you could draw $57,000 a year without even touching principal. Pretty cool, isn't it, Aaron?
Okay.
Okay. Now, here's the next one. This is what a lot of people don't understand. What if you've sold a business or sold land and you invest this after-tax money into an annuity? I have a lot of after-tax money in annuities. And you're going to let it grow. You know, let's take that 6.15% guaranteed rate we have for 5 years. You take the $800,000, you let it grow 5 years, but then you say, send me my mailbox money. Now we're into mailbox money. We annuitize the annuity on a guaranteed basis over 20 years. That is going to send me, Aaron, for 20 years, if that's my money, $5,300 a month, guaranteed. Now, eventually it'll draw down the principal, but I'm going to get the principal and interest. But the beauty of that is every month, I only have to pay taxes on $1,900 of it. That's called an exclusion ratio. So folks, these annuities, these are wonderful tools. They have huge tax advantages if used properly. The interest rates are guaranteed usually much longer than CDs. So if you're sitting there with a bunch of money idle, if you feel like your financial boat's just floating out in the middle of a financial lake and you need some help getting some of this free money from these higher interest rates, why don't you do this right now? Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started. Let's at least have a conversation to see if we can help. Or if you like, you can simply give us a call at 877-499-9255. That's 877-499-WALK. Well, we've enjoyed being with you today, and next week we got another show planned for you. But you remember, between now and then, if all else fails, you be worry-free and make it a good one.